I stand in my childhood home's backyard, watching 300 guests celebrate my sister Sarah's medical school graduation. My parents beam with pride as Sarah gives her thank you speech, calling herself blessed to have such supportive parents who believed in traditional success. The crowd applauds enthusiastically. I pull out my phone, open my banking app showing $3,400,000, and step forward through the crowd. Sarah, Mom, Dad, I call out clearly, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet gathering. I have something to share about that worthless computer hobby you've mocked for 6 years. 6 years earlier, I was 22 years old, a fresh college graduate with a computer science degree, living in my parents' basement in suburban Denver, Colorado. My parents, Robert and Linda, were successful real estate agents who built their entire worldview around traditional career paths. They believed in climbing corporate ladders, earning steady paychecks, and following the well-worn road to middle-class respectability. The day I announced my plan to start an online dropshipping business instead of accepting one of the corporate job offers on my desk, their reaction was swift and brutal. "We didn't pay $40,000 for your education so you could play on computers in the basement," my father declared, his face turning red with frustration. "Those job offers are real opportunities, Jessie. This internet nonsense is just a way to avoid growing up." My mother Linda was equally horrified, but she wrapped her disappointment in layers of maternal concern. "Honey, we love you, but you need to be realistic. Successful people don't make money from their computers. They go to offices, they wear suits, they build careers that people can understand and respect." Meanwhile, my sister Sarah, 18 years old, and heading to pre-medical studies at Stanford University, became the family's golden child overnight. Every dinner conversation turned into a comparison between her academic achievements and my entrepreneurial dreams. "Sarah understands what it takes to succeed," Dad would say, cutting his steak with unnecessary force. "She's not chasing fantasies about getting rich quick on the internet." Sarah played her role perfectly, maintaining modest humility while secretly enjoying the preferential treatment. She would offer me condescending encouragement disguised as sisterly support. "I'm sure you'll figure out what you really want to do eventually," she would say with a sympathetic smile that never reached her eyes. My first business attempts were disasters that only confirmed my parents' worst fears. I started selling phone accessories through a generic dropshipping website, spending my days researching products and writing marketing copy in the basement. The results were humiliating. 0 sales in the first month. My credit card debt mounted as I paid for inventory that sat unopened in cardboard boxes. Extended family gatherings became exercises in public embarrassment. At my cousin's wedding, my parents actually apologized to relatives for my career choice. "He's going through a phase," Mom explained to Aunt Patricia. "We're hoping he'll come to his senses soon and use that expensive education properly." I set up my makeshift office in the corner of the basement, working 18-hour days while the rest of the house slept peacefully above me. The concrete walls felt like a prison, but I refused to give up. Every failed product launch, every day without sales, every disappointed look from my parents only strengthened my resolve to prove them wrong. The extended family dynamics were particularly painful. During holiday gatherings, successful cousins would share stories about their promotions and salary increases while I sat silently, knowing that any mention of my business would be met with polite skepticism at best. Uncle David, a bank manager, would pat me on the shoulder and say things like, "When you're ready for a real job, I know people who are hiring." My first month ended with 0 sales and mounting expenses. My parents began leaving job listings on my desk every morning, circling positions they thought might suit me. The pressure was relentless, but something inside me refused to surrender. I knew that traditional employment felt like death to my spirit, even though I couldn't yet explain why. The breaking point came during Sarah's high school graduation dinner at the fancy steakhouse downtown. I was washing dishes in the kitchen when I overheard my father on the phone with the bank. "We want to transfer $15,000 from Jessie's college fund to Sarah's Stanford account," he said quietly. "At least one of our children is making smart choices with their education." I stood frozen at the sink, soapy water dripping from my hands, as the full weight of their decision hit me. The college fund my grandparents had established for me money I had always assumed would be there if I needed it, was being redirected to fund Sarah's dreams, while mine were dismissed as worthless fantasies. That night, lying on the basement couch that served as my bed, I made a promise to myself. I would make this business work, not just to prove my parents wrong, but to prove that I was right about my own potential. The $15,000 they had given away would seem like pocket change compared to what I would achieve. The discovery of my redirected college fund felt like a physical blow, but it also clarified something important. My parents weren't just skeptical about my business, they were actively betting against my success. This realization hurt deeply, but it also freed me from seeking their approval. If they had already written me off, I had nothing left to lose. I pivoted from dropshipping to affiliate marketing, studying successful entrepreneurs with the obsession of a medical student memorizing anatomy. I devoured books, podcasts, and online courses, learning about sales funnels, conversion optimization, and customer psychology. My parents interpreted this intense focus as further evidence of my delusion. The situation escalated when my parents started inviting their friends over specifically to stage interventions. They would arrange casual dinner parties, where their real estate colleagues and neighbors would corner me with well-meaning advice about accepting reality. My nephew tried one of those internet businesses, one neighbor explained earnestly. Lost $3,000 before he came to his senses and got a job at the post office. The most humiliating incident occurred during our annual 4th of July barbecue. My father, after a few beers, decided to share his concerns about my mental health with the assembled neighbors. "We think Jessie might be going through some kind of unemployment depression," he announced to a group of parents grilling hamburgers. "He spends all day in the basement, convinced he's going to get rich from his computer." The neighbors nodded sympathetically, offering stories about their own children's struggles to launch careers. I sat on the back porch, listening to my father describe my entrepreneurial efforts as symptoms of psychological illness, feeling smaller with each passing minute. Sarah called regularly from Stanford, ostensibly to check on family news, but really to share updates about her academic achievements. She had mastered the art of humble bragging, describing her perfect grades and research opportunities, while expressing concern about my welfare. "I worry about Jessie," she told Mom during one of these calls, loud enough for me to hear. "He seems so isolated and focused on this business thing. Maybe he needs to talk to someone professionally." My girlfriend Emma finally broke up with me after 8 months of watching my business struggle. "I can't date someone without ambition," she said during our painful final conversation at the coffee shop near campus. "You're smart, Jessie, but you're wasting your potential on this pipe dream." My friends ask what my boyfriend does for work, and I don't know what to tell them. The first small breakthrough came in month 6 when I made $200 in a single week promoting educational software. I was ecstatic, but my parents' reaction was devastating. "That's lunch money," Dad said dismissively. "You could make more than that working part-time at Best Buy." Mom suggested I apply for retail positions, saying that customer service experience might help me understand why real businesses succeed. My financial situation became increasingly desperate. When my bank account hit negative balance due to business expenses, and my parents' threats to charge me rent, I had to sell my car to avoid overdraft fees. This meant walking 3 miles daily to the public library for reliable internet access when my parents began threatening to cut off the house Wi-Fi unless I started job hunting. The ultimate humiliation came when I discovered that my success story had become Sarah's failure narrative. A local newspaper interviewed her about being a hometown student excelling at Stanford, and the article mentioned her struggling brother who lives at home. The journalist had clearly gotten this information from my parents, who seemed to take pride in Sarah's achievements while treating my situation as a cautionary tale. Walking to the library every day, carrying my laptop in a backpack like a homeless person, I began to understand something crucial about failure and success. My parents weren't just wrong about my business potential. They were wrong about what constituted real struggle. They saw my unconventional path as evidence of weakness, but I was developing strength they couldn't recognize or understand. The library became my sanctuary and my office. I found a quiet corner near the business section where I could work uninterrupted for hours. The librarians began to recognize me, offering encouraging smiles as I focused intensely on my laptop screen. Some of my most important business breakthroughs happened in that library, surrounded by people who were also pursuing knowledge and improvement without judgment. My parents' disappointment was becoming a powerful motivator rather than a crushing burden. Every dismissive comment, every suggestion that I give up and get a real job, every comparison to Sarah's traditional success only strengthened my determination to succeed on my own terms. But the worst was yet to come. I was about to discover that my parents' lack of support had crossed into active sabotage, and that my sister's concern was actually something much more sinister. The revelation that would shatter my remaining trust in my family came through a piece of mail that my mother forgot to hide. I was walking past the kitchen counter when I saw an envelope addressed to me from a local accounting firm. I had never contacted any accounting firms about employment, but inside was a polite rejection letter thanking me for my interest in their entry-level bookkeeper position. Confused, I started paying closer attention to the mail delivery. Over the next 2 weeks, I intercepted 3 more rejection letters from companies I had never contacted. When I confronted my parents about this mysterious correspondence, their defensive reactions told me everything I needed to know. "We've been helping you apply for suitable positions," Mom explained, as if this was a reasonable parental intervention. "You're clearly not capable of finding appropriate work on your own, so we took the initiative." Dad was more blunt in his justification. "Those applications were our way of helping you face reality," he said, not bothering to look up from his newspaper. "Every rejection letter proves that you need to lower your expectations and accept that this business fantasy isn't working." The true scope of their sabotage became clear when I realized they had been sharing these rejection letters with extended family members as evidence of my unemployability. Cousins, aunts, and uncles all believed I was desperately applying for basic jobs and getting rejected everywhere. They thought I was not only a failed entrepreneur, but also someone who couldn't even get hired for entry-level work. This discovery led to an explosive confrontation that changed our family dynamic permanently. "You had no right to submit applications in my name," I shouted, feeling years of accumulated frustration boiling over. "You've been sabotaging my reputation, while I'm actually building something real." "Building what?" Dad shot back. "You've been unemployed for 8 months, living in our basement, contributing nothing to this household while your sister excels at one of the best universities in the country. Your business has earned less than minimum wage," Mom added with devastating precision. "If you spent the same amount of time working at McDonald's, you'd have more money and more respect." The argument reached a crescendo when they delivered their ultimatum. "You have 30 days to get a real job," Dad announced with finality, "or you'll need to find somewhere else to live. We're not going to enable this delusion any longer." Sarah returned home for Christmas break during this family crisis, and her reaction revealed the depth of her true character. Instead of offering support or trying to mediate, she immediately sided with our parents completely. "Jessie, you're being selfish," she said with surprising venom. "Mom and Dad have supported you long enough. It's time to grow up and stop embarrassing the family." The family Christmas dinner became an organized intervention where aunts, uncles, and grandparents took turns lecturing me about responsibility and maturity. They had clearly been briefed by my parents about my employment rejections and financial situation. Cousin Marcus, a successful accountant, offered me an entry-level position at his firm as a family favor, speaking to me like I was a charity case. "This is a real opportunity, Jessie," Marcus explained condescendingly. "Data entry, filing, basic bookkeeping. It's honest work that could lead somewhere if you apply yourself." When I refused this generous offer, the family explosion was immediate and devastating. Grandpa called me ungrateful. Aunt Patricia said I was breaking my parents' hearts. Even Sarah's boyfriend, home from his own college, felt comfortable lecturing me about taking advantage of family generosity. My parents changed the Wi-Fi passwords that night and removed my key to the house, effectively treating me like an unwelcome guest rather than their son. I started sleeping in my car in the church parking lot down the street, sneaking back during the day when they were at work to shower and gather supplies. Despite these impossible circumstances, my business was actually starting to gain real traction. I had my first $1,000 month during this period of family warfare, but I kept this information to myself. The irony was painful but motivating. As my family's treatment of me reached its lowest point, My professional success was finally beginning to emerge. The cruelest twist came when Sarah received her acceptance letter to Johns Hopkins Medical School. My parents threw an elaborate celebration dinner at the most expensive restaurant in town, inviting extended family and close friends to honor their daughter's achievement. I was not invited to this celebration, despite living in the same house. I learned about the dinner from overhearing phone conversations and seeing the Facebook photos afterward. Sarah looked radiant in a new dress, surrounded by proud family members raising champagne glasses in her honor. The absence of any mention of me in the social media posts made my exclusion completely clear to anyone who knew our family. The final devastating blow came when I applied for a small business loan at our local bank, hoping to invest my recent profits into inventory expansion. The loan officer, Mrs. Henderson, had known our family for years through my parents' real estate business. She rejected my application before I had finished explaining my business model. "Your father called ahead to warn us," she said with embarrassed sympathy. "He's concerned that you're not in a stable mental state to handle financial responsibility right now. He asked us not to approve any loan applications until you've gotten professional help." Sitting in that bank parking lot after being rejected for a loan I was actually qualified for, I realized my parents had moved beyond passive disapproval into active sabotage. They weren't just refusing to support my business. They were using their community connections to prevent my success. That night, sleeping in my car in the frigid December air, I made a decision that would change everything. I would cut all contact with my family until I could prove my worth in terms they could never dismiss or undermine. The pain of their betrayal would become the fuel for my success. But first, I was about to discover something about Sarah that would make her treatment of me even more personally devastating than I had imagined. The discovery that changed everything came through pure accident. I was clearing out my belongings from the basement, preparing to leave the family home permanently, when I found a manila folder hidden behind my old college textbooks. Inside were printed drafts of Sarah's medical school application essays, and reading them felt like receiving a physical blow to my chest. The essays described in detail my struggles with unemployment, my failed business attempts, and my increasing isolation from family and friends. But Sarah hadn't written about these experiences with concern or sympathy. Instead, she had crafted my pain into compelling narratives about how growing up with a dysfunctional sibling had motivated her own academic excellence and desire to help others overcome mental health challenges. One particularly devastating passage read, "Watching my brother's descent into unemployment, depression, and internet addiction has taught me the importance of mental health support in medical practice. His refusal to accept reality, and his increasing isolation from family members who love him, has shown me how important it is to recognize warning signs before destructive patterns become entrenched." Sarah had turned my entrepreneurial journey into evidence of mental illness, my determination into delusion, and my family's lack of support into a story of patient love being rejected by an unstable person. She was using my supposed failure as proof of her own wisdom and compassion, planning to present these essays to admissions committees at the most prestigious medical schools in the country. The folder also contained detailed notes about my daily activities, my financial situation, and even conversations I had thought were private. Sarah had been systematically documenting my life like a case study, feeding information to our parents while positioning herself as the family's salvation from my embarrassment. Reading those essays in the cold basement that had been my home for months, I felt something fundamental shift inside me. The hurt and anger transformed into a clarity I had never experienced before. My family hadn't just failed to support me. They had been actively working against me, while using my struggles to advance their own interests. That night, I used the last of my savings to rent a cheap motel room across town. It was a dingy place, with thin walls and a leaky faucet, but it represented something crucial: complete independence from my family's influence and judgment. For the first time in months, I could focus entirely on my business without their constant criticism and interference. Cutting all contact with my family was painful but liberating. I stopped answering their phone calls, deleted their social media connections, and focused entirely on the business that they had dismissed as worthless. Without the daily stress of family conflict, my productivity and creativity exploded. I developed an innovative social media marketing strategy that combined educational content with strategic product placement. Instead of trying to sell directly, I built trust by providing genuine value to potential customers. My audience began growing rapidly as people recognized the authenticity and expertise behind my content. The breakthrough came in month 15 when I hit my first $10,000 month. This wasn't luck or accident. It was the result of systematic testing, optimization, and genuine understanding of customer needs. I reinvested every dollar back into inventory, advertising, and building a team of freelancers who shared my commitment to excellence. My team members became the supportive community my family had never provided. I treated them with respect and fairness, paying promptly and recognizing their contributions publicly. Several of them commented on how different I was from other business owners they had worked with, how much they appreciated being treated as partners rather than disposable resources. While I was building my business empire from a motel room, Sarah was receiving featured coverage in the local magazine as a hometown medical prodigy. The article described her academic achievements and volunteer work, quoting her extensively about her commitment to helping others overcome challenges. The irony was sharp, but no longer painful. I had moved beyond needing my family's approval. My former high school friends began noticing my business success through social media. Some reached out with genuine curiosity about my work, offering apologies for not taking my entrepreneurial goals seriously before. These conversations helped me realize how much I had grown personally during the months of family conflict. The most important relationship I developed during this period was with Tom Bradley, a successful entrepreneur who recognized my potential and offered to mentor me. Tom had built and sold 3 companies, and he understood the isolation and family pressure that often accompanied unconventional career paths. Most people fear other people's success more than they fear their own failure, Tom explained during one of our weekly coffee meetings. Your family's reaction isn't really about protecting you. It's about protecting themselves from having to question their own choices. Tom's guidance helped me develop more sophisticated business systems and think strategically about long-term growth. Under his mentorship, I learned to build automated income streams and scale operations efficiently. My business evolved from a desperate attempt to prove my worth into a genuine enterprise creating value for customers around the world. By month 18, I was consistently earning more per month than my father made in his real estate business. I moved into a modest but comfortable apartment downtown, furnished it professionally, and began building the life I had always envisioned for myself. The local business community slowly began recognizing my achievements despite my father's earlier attempts at sabotage. Other entrepreneurs reached out for advice and collaboration, treating me as a peer rather than a curiosity. I joined professional networking groups and spoke at local business conferences about online marketing strategies. But my success was happening in isolation from my family, who continued to tell neighbors that I had moved away for work rather than admit they had essentially made me homeless. They seemed to prefer the fiction that I was employed elsewhere rather than acknowledge that I had succeeded in the business they had ridiculed. The revelation that would complete my understanding of my family's dysfunction was still to come. I was about to discover that my father's sabotage had extended far beyond what I had already uncovered, and that my business success was happening despite ongoing attempts to undermine my reputation in the local community. My discovery of my father's extended sabotage campaign came through an unexpected source. During a networking event for local entrepreneurs, I was introduced to Janet Walsh, the owner of a successful marketing consultancy. She mentioned casually that she had been interested in working with me for months, but had been warned away by concerning reports about my character. Your father reached out to several business owners in town, Janet explained with obvious discomfort. He told us you were unstable and not to be trusted with money. He said you had a gambling problem, and that anyone who hired you would regret it. The scope of Robert's interference was staggering. He had systematically contacted potential clients, partners, and collaborators in the Denver business community, presenting himself as a concerned father trying to protect others from his son's supposed psychological problems. He had created an entire fictional narrative about my mental health and financial irresponsibility. I almost believed him, Janet continued. But then I started seeing your actual work online, and it was obviously professional and effective. I realized something didn't add up about his warnings. This revelation forced me to make a strategic decision that would define the next phase of my business development. Instead of trying to rebuild my reputation locally while fighting my father's ongoing sabotage, I pivoted completely to national and international markets. I would build my success beyond the reach of his interference. The pivot proved transformational. Working with clients across the country and around the world, I was judged purely on results rather than local gossip or family reputation. My business exploded as I applied the marketing strategies I had perfected to a much larger audience with diverse needs and budgets. I built automated systems that generated passive income around the clock. While my family slept peacefully in suburban Denver, my business was serving customers in different time zones, processing orders, and building relationships that would last for years. The beauty of online business became fully apparent as my income became completely independent of geographical limitations. My first $1 million quarter happened almost by accident. I had been focused on consistent monthly growth, but the compound effect of successful marketing campaigns, satisfied customers, and strategic reinvestment created exponential results that surprised even me. The day I realized I had earned more in 3 months than most people made in several years was both thrilling and surreal. I hired a personal assistant, an accountant, and a legal advisor to help manage the growing complexity of my business operations. These professionals became trusted advisors who helped me build legitimate business infrastructure and plan for sustainable long-term growth. Having a team of experts who respected my vision was healing after years of family dismissal. While my business empire was expanding globally, Sarah was beginning her final year of medical school and had announced her engagement to Marcus Reynolds, a wealthy surgeon she had met during her hospital rotations. My parents were planning an elaborate engagement party, sparing no expense to celebrate their daughter's perfect life trajectory. The engagement announcement in the local society pages described Sarah as a brilliant medical student from a supportive family background. The article quoted her extensively about her goals of helping underserved communities, but it made no mention of having a brother. I had been completely erased from the family narrative presented to the public. My business began receiving attention from industry publications and conference organizers. I was invited to speak at marketing conferences and contribute articles to business magazines about innovative online strategies. The recognition from professional peers felt infinitely more valuable than any family approval I had once sought. Emma, my former girlfriend, reached out through mutual friends after seeing news coverage of my business success. Her message was carefully crafted to seem casual, mentioning how proud she was to see my achievements and wondering if we might reconnect for coffee sometime. I politely declined, recognizing that her renewed interest was motivated by my financial success rather than any genuine regret about her earlier judgment. My luxury apartment downtown became a reflection of my business success, but I maintained a deliberately humble lifestyle. I bought quality items that would last, but I avoided flashy displays of wealth that might attract unwanted attention or create security risks. The most expensive purchase I made was a high-end laptop and office equipment that improved my productivity. The business conferences I attended introduced me to other successful entrepreneurs who had overcome family skepticism and social pressure to build significant enterprises. These relationships helped me understand that my experience was common among high achievers who chose unconventional paths. Through my expanding professional network, I learned something that changed my perspective on my family's financial situation completely. Sarah's medical school tuition and living expenses were being funded partially by loans that my parents had personally guaranteed, putting their house and real estate business at risk as collateral. The conversation happened during a conference reception where I was speaking with Dr. Amanda Foster, a physician who had attended Johns Hopkins several years earlier. She mentioned the astronomical cost of medical education there, and how few families could afford the full expense without taking on significant debt. Most families either have to be extremely wealthy or take on crushing debt to send a child there, she explained. The tuition alone is over $60,000 per year, and living expenses in Baltimore add another $20,000. Students who don't qualify for substantial financial aid often graduate with $300,000 in debt. This information made me realize that my parents had been making enormous financial sacrifices for Sarah's education while publicly presenting her success as entirely merit-based. They were telling everyone that Sarah had earned full scholarships through academic excellence, but the reality was that they had mortgaged their future to fund her medical school dream. The irony was devastating. While they had mocked my business as financially irresponsible and unsustainable, they had been taking on debt that would take decades to repay. While they criticized my unconventional career path as risky, they had bet their retirement security on Sarah's traditional success. Sarah appeared to be completely unaware of her parents' financial sacrifice. Her social media posts from Baltimore showed expensive dinners, shopping trips, and vacation getaways that suggested someone living comfortably without financial stress. She was enjoying the lifestyle her parents' debt had purchased while they struggled to maintain appearances back in Denver. My business had reached consistent seven-figure annual revenue, making me wealthier than anyone in my family by a significant margin. But this success felt hollow without the possibility of sharing it with people who had supported my journey. My family had not only failed to support me, they had actively worked against my success, while making destructive financial decisions based on traditional expectations rather than practical reality. The setup for our final confrontation was taking shape as Sarah's medical school graduation approached, and my parents planned their most elaborate celebration yet. I was about to learn that Sarah's manipulation had extended even beyond what I had already discovered, and that the graduation party would provide the perfect opportunity for truth and justice to finally prevail. The final months before Sarah's graduation party brought my business to unprecedented heights, while revealing the full extent of my family's financial and emotional dysfunction. I had just surpassed $3,400,000 in total business earnings when I received an unexpected invitation that would set the stage for everything that followed. The invitation came not from my parents or Sarah directly, but from Marcus Reynolds, Sarah's fiancé, whom I had never actually met. He sent a formal wedding invitation along with a note explaining that he had heard I was Sarah's brother and lived in the Denver area. He seemed genuinely confused about why Sarah had never mentioned me or included me in family gatherings. "Sarah talks about being very close to her family," Marcus wrote, "but she's never mentioned having a brother." When I asked her about extended family members to invite to our engagement party, she said it was just her and her parents. "I found your address through public records and wanted to reach out personally." This communication revealed that Sarah had been systematically erasing me from her personal narrative, telling her fiancé and his wealthy family that she was essentially an only child. She had created an entirely fictional version of our family structure to match whatever impression she wanted to make on different audiences. My investigation into my parents' financial situation had uncovered the true scope of their struggles. Robert's real estate business was declining due to market changes and increased competition from online platforms. Linda's commission income had dropped significantly as traditional real estate practices became less profitable. They were facing financial pressures they had never experienced before. The second mortgage they had taken to fund Sarah's graduation party and residency transition expenses would increase their monthly payments by over $2,000. At their current income levels, they were essentially house poor, maintaining the appearance of success while struggling to pay basic bills. Meanwhile, Sarah remained completely oblivious to her parents' sacrifices, planning an expensive European honeymoon and elaborate wedding reception that would cost additional tens of thousands of dollars. She had shown Marcus's family photos of my parents' house and neighborhood, presenting them as evidence of her stable, upper-middle-class background. The most disturbing discovery came when I learned about Sarah's relationship with Marcus's family wealth. The Reynolds family owned a chain of surgical centers and had a net worth in the tens of millions. Sarah had been accepting financial gifts and support from them while simultaneously allowing her own parents to go into debt rather than reveal their financial struggles. She had been telling Marcus's parents that she came from a humble background and needed support, while telling our parents that she was completely independent and successful. She had manipulated both families by presenting different versions of her financial needs and family circumstances. 3 days before the graduation party, I hired a private investigator to document the full extent of Sarah's deception. The investigation revealed that she had been accepting monthly payments from Marcus's trust fund, while our parents were making sacrificial financial decisions to support expenses she could have easily covered herself. The private investigator also uncovered the college essays Sarah had written about me, which had been submitted to multiple medical schools as part of her application materials. She had used my struggles as evidence of her own compassion and wisdom, literally profiting academically from my pain, while contributing to the family dynamics that had caused that pain. But the most shocking discovery was that Sarah had been keeping detailed journals about our family's dysfunction, not out of personal reflection, but as material for a book she planned to write about overcoming family trauma. She had been documenting our parents' mistakes, my business struggles, and the overall household stress, as research for a memoir she intended to publish after establishing her medical career. The journal entries revealed her true feelings about our family with devastating clarity. She described our parents as emotionally unsophisticated and financially irresponsible. She wrote about me with clinical detachment, analyzing my behavior patterns and decision-making processes like I was a psychological case study rather than her brother. Most painfully, the journals revealed that Sarah had been actively encouraging our parents' negative treatment of me because she believed it would drive me away from the family permanently. She saw me as an obstacle to her own success and reputation, someone whose unconventional choices reflected poorly on her carefully crafted image. Her plan had been to establish her medical career and wealthy marriage, then publish a memoir about overcoming family dysfunction that would launch her into public speaking and media opportunities. She intended to use our family's pain as a stepping stone to fame and additional income beyond her medical practice. Reading those journal entries in the days before her graduation party, I felt the last traces of sibling loyalty dissolve completely. Sarah hadn't just failed to support me during my struggles. She had actively worked to make those struggles worse because they served her long-term professional interests. The graduation party would be attended by over 300 people, including Marcus's wealthy family, our extended relatives, my parents' friends and business associates, and many of Sarah's medical school classmates. It would be the perfect audience for the truth to finally emerge. I spent those final days preparing meticulously for the confrontation that would change our family forever. I gathered financial documents, printed copies of Sarah's essays and journal entries, and prepared a presentation that would reveal the full scope of her manipulation to everyone who had been deceived. The irony was perfect. Sarah had planned this party as the ultimate celebration of her success and the validation of our family's traditional values. Instead, it would become the moment when her carefully constructed lies collapsed, and the real story of our family's dysfunction was finally exposed to everyone who mattered. Standing in the backyard of my childhood home, surrounded by hundreds of guests, celebrating my sister's achievements, I was about to deliver the speech that would restore justice and truth to a family that had been built on deception and favoritism for far too long. The crowd grows quiet as I step forward through the gathered guests. Sarah stops mid-sentence in her thank you speech, her face showing confusion that quickly turns to concern. My parents notice the disruption and move closer, clearly wondering what I'm doing at a party they didn't expect me to attend. I apologize for interrupting, I say clearly, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent backyard. But there are some things this family needs to discuss honestly, and some truths that everyone here deserves to know. I pull out my phone and connect it to the projector screen that had been displaying Sarah's medical school photos. The first image that appears is a screenshot of my business banking dashboard, showing $3,400,000 in total earnings over the past 6 years. For 6 years, my parents have told everyone that my online business was a worthless hobby. I continue, watching the shocked expressions spread through the crowd. They've described me as unemployed, mentally unstable, and financially irresponsible. They've apologized to neighbors and relatives for my career choices and hidden my success to avoid admitting they were wrong. The next slides show my business growth charts, client testimonials, and industry recognition awards. Marcus's parents lean forward with obvious interest, recognizing the financial success that contradicts everything Sarah has told them about her family background. While my parents were sabotaging my business relationships and telling potential clients I couldn't be trusted, I continue. I was building an international company that generates more revenue in a month than most people earn in a year. Sarah tries to interrupt, her voice shaky with panic. Jessie, this isn't appropriate. This is my graduation party. You're absolutely right, Sarah, I reply calmly. This is your graduation party. So let's talk about how you've been funding your education and what you've been telling different people about our family. The next slides reveal the financial documents showing my parents' second mortgage and the loans they've guaranteed for Sarah's medical school expenses. I explain clearly how they've risked their retirement security while Sarah has been accepting additional money from Marcus's family under false pretenses. Sarah has been telling Marcus's parents that she comes from a humble background and needs financial support, I say, looking directly at the Reynolds family. Meanwhile, she's allowed our parents to go into debt rather than reveal that she already has access to substantial financial resources. Marcus's face changes dramatically as he realizes the implications of this deception. His parents exchange glances that suggest they're having the same realization about Sarah's character and honesty. The most devastating revelation comes when I display excerpts from Sarah's college essays and journal entries. The crowd listens in stunned silence as I read passages where Sarah describes using my struggles as material for her academic advancement and future book publication. Sarah has been documenting our family's problems not out of concern, but as research for a memoir she plans to write about overcoming family dysfunction, I explain. She's been encouraging our parents to treat me poorly because she believed my failure would make her success story more compelling. Sarah's face goes completely white as she realizes her private writings are being exposed to everyone she knows. Several of her medical school classmates look horrified as they understand how she has manipulated her personal relationships for professional gain. Marcus steps away from Sarah physically, his body language making his feelings clear before he says anything. "Sarah, is this true?" he asks quietly. "Have you been lying to my family about your financial situation?" Before Sarah can answer, I make my final announcement. "I'm going to pay off my parents' mortgage and all of Sarah's medical school loans," I say, watching the crowd's reaction. Not because they deserve it, but because I can afford to do it, and because families should support each other honestly. The crowd erupts in surprised murmurs as people process this unexpected generosity. My parents break down in tears, finally understanding the magnitude of their mistakes and the son they had dismissed so completely. Robert approaches me with tears streaming down his face. "Jessie, I'm so sorry," he says, his voice breaking. "We were so wrong about everything. We were afraid you would fail. But we were really afraid that you would succeed and prove that everything we believed about success was wrong." Linda embraces me tightly, sobbing with remorse. "We thought we were protecting you from disappointment," she whispers. "We didn't realize we were the ones causing your pain." Extended family members approach throughout the evening, offering genuine apologies and expressing admiration for my business achievements. Many admit they had always sensed something wasn't right about the family dynamics, but hadn't understood the full situation. Marcus quietly ends his engagement to Sarah that evening, telling her that the foundation of dishonesty makes a marriage impossible. Several of his family members approach me to learn more about my business, expressing interest in potential investment opportunities. Sarah attempts to defend herself, claiming that her essays and journals were just academic exercises, but the evidence is too overwhelming and her explanations too weak. Many of her friends and classmates leave the party early, clearly uncomfortable with what they've learned about her character. The months that follow bring genuine healing and reconciliation to our family relationships. My parents become my biggest supporters, proudly telling neighbors about my business success and introducing me as their entrepreneur son. Robert starts referring potential clients to me for online marketing services, finally understanding the value of what I've built. Linda frames my business magazine features instead of Sarah's academic awards, displaying them prominently in their living room. They begin sharing my success stories, with the same enthusiasm they once reserved for Sarah's achievements. I established the Bradley Foundation for Unconventional Entrepreneurs, named after my mentor Tom, providing grants and guidance for people pursuing non-traditional business paths despite family skepticism. The foundation helps dozens of aspiring entrepreneurs overcome the same obstacles I faced. Sarah eventually apologizes several months later, acknowledging her selfishness and manipulation. Our relationship remains strained but is slowly healing, as she demonstrates genuine remorse through her actions, rather than just words. She enters therapy to address her narcissistic tendencies and begins making amends to the people she has hurt. The most important lesson I learned through this experience is that success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. Family members can be our harshest critics because they fear our failure, but sometimes they fear our success even more because it challenges their own life choices. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting the pain or pretending the damage never happened. It means freeing yourself to build something better while maintaining your integrity and compassion. The approval that truly matters comes from within, but when you earn it honestly through hard work and persistence, other people's respect follows naturally. Today, I work from a beautiful office downtown, with a photo of my reconciled family on my desk alongside awards recognizing my business achievements. I mentor young entrepreneurs who remind me of my former self, helping them navigate family skepticism and social pressure while building something meaningful. The $3,400,000 was never really about the money. It was about proving that unconventional paths can lead to extraordinary destinations when you refuse to surrender your dreams to other people's limitations. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced family opposition to your dreams or career choices? How did you handle the pressure to conform to traditional expectations? Share your story in the comments below, because your experience might inspire someone else who's struggling with similar challenges. If this story resonated with you, please like this video to help other people find it. Subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming adversity and building success against the odds. And share this video with someone who might need encouragement to pursue their own unconventional path. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it reminds you that your dreams are valid regardless of what other people think. Sometimes the biggest risk is not taking any risk at all.